Thank you. All right, I like to start on time and it is 12 o'clock. Thank you everyone for being here. And if more people join in, we'll certainly admit them as they arrive. Hello to everyone and welcome. My name is Paula Shireen and I am here today representing the League of Women Voters of Collier County. We are here to learn more about the importance of primaries and how they function in the state of Florida. We're very excited to welcome Sandy Parker, who's the creator of Sparker's Soapbox. She's on our Zoom meeting today, and Sandy will share with us very important information that will better help us all understand the importance of the primary in August. This presentation is being recorded, so please make sure that you remain muted. If you have questions, submit them in the chat. There will be points during the presentation where we will pause for questions. I will have collected them during the presentation and ask them of Sandy at the staged points. Again, the meeting is recorded and we'll share more information at the end of the presentation about where you can access that recording. So now I'd like to share a little bit about Sandy. Sandy Parker is the founder, the publisher, and the author of Sparker's Soapbox, whose mission it is to facilitate and encourage informed voting and civic participation in Collier County and throughout the state of Florida. In recognition of her work to educate and inform voters, she was awarded the 2022 Distinguished Leadership Award by Greater Naples Leadership, Inc., and the 2024 Outstanding Community Partner Award from the League of Women Voters of Collier County. Sandy frequently speaks about government and elections to community groups, senior living communities, and adult education programs throughout Collier County. Her community activities include the League of Women Voters, the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce, and the Press Club of Southwest Florida. Before moving to Florida over 20 years ago, Sandy held executive positions in accounting, treasury, and investor relations with several Fortune 500 companies, retiring as vice president and treasurer of the Dun & Bradstreet Corporation. Sandy received her BA with highest honors and honors in American Study from Douglas College of Rutgers University and an MBA from the Wharton School. Sandy, thank you for being here with us today, and I will turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Paula. Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. What I plan to do today is present some information to help you get ready to vote in a really informed way in the August primary elections. So I'm going to begin with some vocabulary words that I have found it very important to understand in the context of primary elections in Florida. First, I'm going to talk about partisan versus nonpartisan primaries. Then I'm going to talk about closed primary elections. After that, I'm going to talk about Collier County's political environment, which is something that I had not spoken about prior to this particular election. And I realized this year that understanding the environment in which we are voting is very important to being an informed voter and being sure that you're participating in the elections when you can make the most difference. After that, we'll turn to what is actually on the ballot in August, the federal, state, and local offices that we will be deciding. And then I will close with some key takeaways and things for you to do next. So beginning with partisan versus nonpartisan, as I say, it's an important distinction. Very simply, partisan elections involve political parties. Specifically, this is when voters are choosing their political party's candidate to represent them in the general election. The purpose of a partisan primary election is for candidates who are wanting to be the representative of their party in November. On the other hand, nonpartisan elections do not involve political parties. In nonpartisan elections, voters are simply choosing among candidates without regard to the party affiliation of the candidates, the office, or the voters themselves. And we have both types of primaries here in Florida, and both types take place at the same time this year on August 20th. Now, one difference, additional difference between the two is what it takes to win a partisan primary versus a nonpartisan primary. In a partisan primary, the only requirement of a candidate to win is to get the most votes. It doesn't have to be a majority. In nonpartisan primaries, there's a requirement that a candidate receive at least 50% of the votes. If no candidate receives at least 50% of the votes, then the top 2 vote getters go on the ballot in November, and voters have another opportunity to choose between the two. Next, I want to talk about Florida as a closed primary state and why that matters. Florida is one of just 10 closed primary states in the country. So most of us moved here from a state that does not operate its primaries the way we do here. And very often, one doesn't discover this distinction until it's actually too late to do something about it. And I have heard stories of people who have gone to the polls on election day and been turned away because they didn't understand the rules of closed primaries. So what does this mean? Very simply, it means that you must register as a Republican in order to vote in Republican Party primaries, or register as a Democrat to vote in Democratic Party primaries. You must choose which party's ballot you want to receive and affiliate with that party by registering with the party, and you must do it at least 29 days before Election Day. In other states, the rules are different. In some places, whatever your party affiliation is, doesn't matter. You go to the polls on Election Day and you say, I want the Republican ballot or I want the Democratic ballot. In other states, that option is available to people who are not registered as Republicans or Democrats, people who are no party affiliation or independents. So the rules vary from state to state as to who may vote in primary elections. Florida's closed primary rules are the strictest in the country in terms of who is able to vote in the partisan primary elections. Now, there's an important exception to that closed primary rule. And the exception says that when all the candidates for an office have the same party affiliation, so that the winner will have no opposition, then all qualified voters, regardless of party affiliation, may vote in the primary. So think about it. Let's assume that all the candidates for supervisor of elections, which is a partisan office, are Republicans. That means, by definition, the winner, the next supervisor of elections, will be a Republican. So this exception says that since the winner is going to have no opposition, then all qualified voters may vote in that primary. And when that is the case, we have what's called a universal primary. It's a partisan primary election, but all voters may vote in it because the winner will have no opposition. Okay, great. Well, it turns out that this is a controversial notion. And there are some people who object to the idea of Democrats, no party affiliation, Green Party affiliated people participating in their partisan primary election to choose their party's representative. And so the question was raised, what if we have a write-in candidate? What if a candidate qualifies to run for the office as a write-in? Will that have the effect of circumventing that universal primary rule? And the answer that was handed down was yes. This write-in loophole means that it is legal to circumvent an otherwise universal primary. What does it take for someone to file as a write-in candidate? It's a lot easier to file and qualify to be on the ballot as a write-in candidate than it is to actually be a legitimate candidate. A legitimate candidate must get on the ballot either by collecting a number of signatures on a petition by registered voters or by paying a filing fee. A write-in candidate doesn't have to do either of those things. They have to complete a form and they have to submit some other paperwork, but there's no money and there's no petitions. When someone does qualify as a write-in, their name doesn't even appear on the ballot in November. What appears on the ballot is simply a horizontal line with the words write-in under it. And as a voter, you're looking at your ballot, you have the names of the candidates, each one has an oval next to it to the left for you to fill in. And then there's a line that says write-in, and it also has an oval that you may fill in. So that's how that happens when you see that on the ballot in November. And that's the write-in loophole. Okay, let's see if we've got any questions at this point, Paula, on partisan versus nonpartisan primaries, closed primaries, or the write-in loophole.
Sandy, so far we do not have any questions, so we may proceed. Thank you.
Okay, we'll keep going. So now that we've got that terminology understood, we're going to turn to Collier County's political environment. The first thing that is important to understand about our political environment is that every single elected representative for Collier County residents is a Republican, with the exception of the President of the United States, Joe Biden, who is a Democrat. So that means at the federal level of government, both of Florida's U.S. senators are Republicans. The 3 U.S. congressmen who represent parts of Collier County are Republicans. At the state level, the governor, the 3 cabinet members are Republicans. The state senator who represents Collier County is a Republican. The 3 state representatives who represent us in Tallahassee are Republicans. And at our county level of government, all 5 county commissioners and the 5 constitutional officers, that being the sheriff, supervisor of elections, clerk of courts and comptroller, tax collector, and property appraiser, are all Republicans. That's the state of the game. The next thing to know is that the last time a Democrat won a general election in Collier County was 40 years ago. It's been 40 years since Collier County voters have elected a Democrat. 40 years ago, we elected a Democrat to be sheriff. That was Aubrey Rogers. And we elected a Democrat as property appraiser, and that was Sam Colding. So it's been a while. So that's the state of the game. How did it get to be that way? Why has this situation continued for 40 years in such an unbroken manner? Well, I think there's several things that explain it. Most obviously, it's that more Collier County voters are registered Republicans than any other group. 54% of Collier County's 257,000 registered voters are registered as Republicans. Just 20% are registered as Democrats, and a full 26% are everything else. No party affiliation, Green Party, Libertarian Party, etc. So Republicans outnumber non-Republicans right off the bat. So that gives them an obvious advantage when it comes to winning elections. But I don't think that's the only explanation. Republicans have also raised more money for their candidates than Democrats have raised for their candidates. And to the extent that you think money plays a part in politics and has something to do with candidate success, this is a significant thing to be aware of. So here's two examples from the most recent general elections. Congressional District 19 incumbent Byron Donalds was running for a second term. His campaign raised $5.2 million, and he was being challenged by Democrat Cindy Banyai, whose campaign raised $108,000. Donalds raised 48 times more for his campaign than Banyai. Locally, the numbers are smaller, but the story's the same. In County Commission District 2, Republican Chris Hall raised $145,000. Democrat B.B. Cantor raised $45,000. So that's 4 times more raised by the Republican than the Democrat. So that's a second reason that I think this has perpetuated the Republican dominance in Collier County politics. But there's one more reason, and that is that Republican voter turnout in Collier County's general elections has been greater as well. So here we see in 2022, overall Collier County's voter turnout was 65%. But that's made up of very different numbers depending on party affiliation. Republican voter turnout was 75%. 3 out of 4 registered Republicans went to the polls in November of 2022. Only 59% of Democrats went to the polls, and only 50% of everybody else voted on Election Day in 2022. So when you look at the 3 of these things combined, the fact that we're currently starting with a majority of registered Republicans in the county, they raise more money than their Democratic challengers, and they get their voters to the polls more regularly than anyone else. I think it's no wonder that Republicans have won with overwhelming margins in recent elections, and I think this helps explain the 40-year history. This chart shows the 2022 general election results from Collier County ballots cast. Every single partisan election that we had that year, to the extent that the candidate even had a challenger, was won by the Republican with at least 70% of the vote. The 3 that you see here as unopposed, Bob Rommel for State Representative District 81, Lauren Mello for State Representative District 82, and District 4 County Commissioner Dan Kowal, Rommel and Mello didn't even have anybody challenging them at all. They automatically were reelected. Kowal, as we will see in a minute, did have challengers, but a different situation led to his being unopposed in November. Now I'm going to actually take you through some recent examples that show how we got to where we are today and some of this terminology playing out in practice. Starting with 2022's District 2 County Commission race. We had 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat running for that seat. The Republicans were Reg Buxton, Chris Hall, Gerald Lefevre, and Nancy Lewis. Because there was a Democrat running, BB Cantor, voters who, the Republican candidate who won the closed partisan primary would face the Democrat on the ballot in November, and voters would have a choice. Therefore, this was a closed Republican primary, and only people who were registered Republicans would be allowed to, who live in District 2, would be allowed to vote in that election. So what happened? Chris Hall won the closed primary, receiving 50.1% of the votes cast. His closest challenger, Nancy Lewis, got 28%. So Hall really decisively won among the Republicans who were voting in that closed primary. We get to November, and as could be expected, he defeated his Democrat challenger with 50% of the votes. So you should start thinking about this, 70%. So you should start thinking about this 70% number as that's what it's been. That's what's fair to assume. So that's how the closed primary, the fact that only registered Republicans who voted in District 2 were able to participate in choosing their county commissioner. The real time to pay attention to who's running is that August primary, because chances are that the winner of that closed Republican primary, whether it be Chris Hall or Reg Buxton or Nancy Lewis or Gerald Lefevre, it was going to be one of those people, because whoever won that was going to go on the ballot in November, and chances were that that candidate would get 70% of the votes. Now let's look at another example, and that's County Commission District 4. Here, we only had Republicans qualifying to run for this seat. But it was a competitive seat. There were 3 people challenging incumbent Penny Taylor, all Republicans. That's the situation when there should have been a universal primary, because the winner was going to be a Republican and there would be no opposition in November. So this should have been open to all voters who live in District 4. So what happened? Well, to avoid there being a universal primary, a gentleman named William Oppenheimer filed to run as a write-in candidate. Because the write-in loophole is legal, that meant that only registered Republicans would be able to vote in the closed Republican primary to choose a candidate to face the write-in in November. So what happened? Kowal won, not as decisively as Hall won in District 2. He got 42% of the votes. And then 2 days after the primary, Oppenheimer withdrew, making Kowal the automatic winner. That's why I showed Kowal as unopposed in November, but a different situation than the case where no one challenged him in the first place. So again, voters who didn't vote in that closed Republican primary in August, between those 4 Republicans seeking the seat, really didn't have an opportunity to participate in choosing their county commissioner. So, since Republicans are likely to win the general elections, the most meaningful contests for Collier County voters are the Republican primaries. This again is because Florida is a closed primary state. Only people who are registered with the party are able to vote in that party's primary elections. Wow. So where does that leave Collier County voters who are not registered Republicans? Well, the first thing to remember is, when does your party affiliation even make a difference? It doesn't make any difference at all when it comes to voting in the general election. Everybody gets the same general election ballot. You can choose a Republican or a Democrat regardless of how you are registered. But where it does matter, and really the only time it matters, is when it comes to voting in partisan primary elections. And if you want to have a say in who your elected representative is going to be, whether we're talking about Congress, state house, state senate, state house member, if we're talking about county commissioner, if we're talking about supervisor of elections, you need to be a registered Republican in order to participate in that closed primary election. So what you might want to do is think about how you are registered before that 29-day deadline. Do we have any questions about this?
We do, Sandy. We have a question about the loophole. So the question is, can the write-in loophole be challenged in Florida courts? And do you know, has it ever been challenged in the past?
Sorry. Well, I don't know that it's been challenged. It is legal. It was a legal ruling that that made it in effect. I've been asked this question before. I'm not aware that anybody has challenged it. But as of now, it is legal. It is known by the legislature to be a loophole. They have had opportunities to close the loophole, and they have decided not to do so. So that's where we are. And so the reason I talk about this, and I talk about Collier County's political environment, is because I think we all have to be informed voters and understand the rules of the game where we live, and vote. So that's really what's going on. Any other questions?
That's it for now.
Somebody typed, can I change back to
change back?
Yeah. So you may change your party affiliation as often as you like and for any reason at all. Anything else?
Will the viewers have the opportunity to view and share? Yes, absolutely. We'll talk about where it's going to be posted at the end of the presentation. Thanks for asking.
Okay. The next thing I want to talk about in terms of Collier County's political environment is the role that Alfie Oaks has played in our recent elections. And I've found that people are generally aware that he does play a role. I was curious to know how that came about and why it came about. So the way it came about was during the pandemic, when you'll remember that we started getting told that for our safety and to protect from the spread of the disease, we should wear masks. And it started with guidance from the federal level. We then had the guidance at the state level, and then it came down to the county commission. And the Collier County Commission took up a proposed ordinance, which is a local law, that would require businesses to require their customers to wear masks when they came into the store. And it was for the safety of all the customers. So some businessmen, including Mr. Oaks, objected to that direction. And so he was very vocal in the county commission meeting before the vote was taken. He spoke out against the mask ordinance. But in the end, the ordinance was passed, and it was passed by a vote of 3-2. This is a picture of a sign that was placed on the glass door at the entrance to Seed to Table. It was taken on July 25th, 2020. And the sign says, "Attention customers, mask exemption guidelines. Those in our lovely government have ordered all persons entering indoor facilities to wear a mask. If you have a medical condition that prevents you from wearing a mask, you are exempt from this order. Due to HIPAA and the Fourth Amendment, we cannot legally ask you about your medical condition. Therefore, if we see you without a mask, we will assume you have a medical condition, and we will welcome you inside to support our business." So in other words, Seed to Table was not going to enforce the mask ordinance. And the people pictured on the right are the 5 county commissioners who took that vote. The 2 on the top were the 2 who voted in the minority against adopting the ordinance, and that was Commissioners Donna Fiala and Bill McDaniel. The 3 on the bottom labeled socialist are the 3 who voted for the ordinance. Penny Taylor, who we saw was defeated in the District 4 race by Dan Kowal. Bert Saunders, who is being challenged by 3 Republicans in his seeking of re-election this year, and Andy Solis, who chose not to run for re-election. So that's where we start to see Alfie Oaks really flexing his muscle and flaunting this ordinance that was passed by the county. Not only that, but threatening the incumbent 3 who voted for the ordinance that he would see to it that they were not reelected when their time came. And in fact, he was successful. Neither Penny Taylor nor Andy Solis are on the commission now. And as I said, Bert Saunders is, and we'll talk about him in a minute. So, okay, that was July. Later that year, in August, we had primary elections. And one of the positions that people who are registered Republicans vote on is who will be their county state committee man. And Alfie Oaks ran for Republican state committee man in 2020. And he defeated the incumbent, Doug Rankin, who had been in that position for many years. In other words, he and people who were supporting him took over the Collier County Republican Party. In 2022, so now we're 2 years after that, Alfie has become a bigger player in our local elections and has control of the Republican Party. And they endorsed a number of candidates who were running in the August elections. The party endorsed them, and Alfie called them his freedom picks. They included nonpartisan positions as well as partisan positions. For school board, he endorsed Jerry Rutherford, Kelly Lichter, and Timothy Moshier. For county commissioner, he endorsed Chris Hall and Dan Kowal. He also endorsed for Greater Naples Fire Commissioner Patrick Dearborn, and for county judge Chris Brown. And you won't be surprised to know that all 7 of Alfie's freedom picks won. So that's where things stood at the end of our most recent elections in 2022. Alfie has continued to serve as state committee man, and he has continued to have control over the Republican Party in Collier County. Now it's 2024, and his 4-year term as state committee man has ended. You probably read in the papers of his attempt to file the paperwork to qualify to be on the ballot, how that failed. So he will not be on the ballot as state committee man, but I think it's fair to say that his power will continue to be felt. Any questions about that?
It looks like we're okay so far, Sandy. Thanks.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to turn to what we actually will have on our ballot in August. And I'm going to start with the federal offices on the ballot. I am going to cover a lot of information here, and the idea isn't that you're going to remember it or that you're going to somehow use this to decide how to fill out your ballot. The idea really is to let you know that there is a lot going on and to motivate you to begin to pay attention and think about and do the research that you will want to do so that you can be informed about every single choice that you're going to have on your August ballot. So we're going to begin with the U.S. Senate, and everyone knows that each state elects 2 U.S. senators, and they're elected by all the voters statewide, and the term of office is 6 years. So Rick Scott is the one of our 2 senators who is up for election this year, and he is seeking a second 6-year term. His most likely challenger, Democrat challenger, is considered to be Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. But it's important to know that there are many people running for this seat, and both Scott and Mucarsel-Powell have others challenging them to represent their parties on the general election ballot in November. Therefore, there will be closed Republican primaries, a closed Republican primary to choose the representative to go on the ballot for the Republican Party, and a closed primary where registered Democrats will choose who they want to face off against the winner of the Republican primary. As I said, it's likely that it'll be Rick Scott and Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, but voters have a choice. If you are a registered Democrat, this is one of probably the only partisan primary that you will have on your ballot. If you are a registered Republican, this is the first of many. Turning to the House of Representatives, here we start to get into what district you live in, and that's a function of your residence address. Members of Congress serve 2-year terms. There are no term limits. And so every seat is up for re-election every 2 years. So this is a map of South Florida, and the outline of Collier County is in red. And so you can see that parts of Collier County are in District 19 and parts are in District 26. By voting age population, District 19 has 44% of Collier County's voters, and District 26 has 55%. The remaining 1%, you can look in the northern part of the county. It's part of Immokalee, is included in District 18. But most of us are in District 19 or District 26. So let's start with District 19. The incumbent congressman in District 19 is Byron Donalds, and he is running for a 3rd term, and he has a Democrat challenger named Carrie Lerner. Because there is only one person running from each party, there will not be a partisan primary election. Both of these people will appear on the ballot in November. So if you live in District 19, you will have this choice in November. If you're one of the 55% of Collier voters who lives in District 26, the story is a little bit different. Here, the incumbent is Mario Diaz-Balart, and he has 2 Republican challengers, Rich Evans and Johnny Fratto. There is a Democrat challenger, which means that District 26 voters will have a choice in November. Therefore, the Republican primary for District 26 is closed, and only registered Republicans will be able to choose among those 3 gentlemen. The winner will go on the ballot in November. Coming down to state government, beginning with the Florida legislature. The Florida Senate term is 4 years, and we elected our Senator, Kathleen Passidomo, in 2022. So we will not have a Senate seat on the ballot, but we will have House seats because just like in Congress, the term of office is 2 years, and so every seat is up for election every 2 years. Here again, the outline of the county is in red, and you can see that 14% of Collier County voters live in State House District 80, 51% live in 81, and 35% live in 82. In District 80, the incumbent is Adam Botana. He has one Democrat challenger, Mitchell Schleyer, and there's also a write-in, Patrick Post. There will be no partisan primary elections. These three people, well, Botana and Schleyer will be named on the ballot in November. Post will not be named. There will be a line that says write-in. In District 81, we have an open seat because the incumbent there, Bob Rommel, is term limited. So we have Republicans Yvette Benaroche and Greg Foley. There is a Democrat running. Therefore, it will be a closed Republican primary. Only registered Republicans will choose between Benaroche and Foley. The winner will go up against Democrat Charles Work in November. This is where I say, remember that 70% rule. In District 82, the incumbent is Lauren Mello. She has a Democrat challenger, Arthur Osland, so she is not automatically reelected as she was 2 years ago. It will go to November. I predict the same 70% result that we have seen traditionally. The state executive branch, I just want to mention that those four people, which is the governor, the secretary of agriculture, the attorney general, and the chief financial officer, they are elected to 4-year terms in the midterm years. And so we elected all of them in 2022, so no executive branch offices on the ballot. We do have, in Florida, we vote on judges, and people generally don't know very much about the judicial system here and how we vote for judges. So I'm going to spend an extra minute just talking high level about the system of state courts within Florida's judicial branch. It's a 4-tiered system. We have a Supreme Court at the top, 6 district courts of appeal, 20 judicial circuits, and 67 county courts. Judges are elected in nonpartisan elections. They serve 6-year terms, and there are no term limits, but there is a mandatory retirement age of 75. The important thing to know when it comes to voting on judges is that we elect them differently depending on whether they are appellate court justices and judges or trial court judges. So here we see that the top 2 tiers I'm showing as yes or no. What that means is that that's the choice that voters get. These people get to be judges or justices initially because they are appointed by the governor. The governor appoints a judge or Supreme Court justice, and then at the next general election, which is at least 1 year after the appointment, they appear on the ballot and voters get to say, yes, they should be retained for another term, or no, they should not be retained. That's the choice we get as voters, yes or no. That's appellate court justices. Trial court judges function the same way as other nonpartisan elections. Florida attorneys decide if they want to be a judge. They file paperwork to qualify for the ballot. And if there's more than one person who wants a particular seat, they compete with each other. And the winner, 50% or more, the winner gets the position. So that's the difference. What will we have on the ballot this year? Well, we're going to have 6 merit retention decisions in November. We will have 2 Supreme Court justices and 4 Sixth Circuit judges. We will do yes/no decisions on all 6 of those people. At the circuit court level, we have most circuit court judges whose terms are up were not challenged and were automatically reelected. But 2 of our incumbent judges, Elizabeth Creer and Eric Leontief, have challengers. And so voters will have the 2 Group 28 and Group 6 seats on the ballot in August, and the winners will be decided at that time. And that will be on the ballot of all Collier County voters. At the county judge level, we had 3 judges whose terms are up, and the 3 of them are seeking re-election. That's Blake Adams, Michael Brown, and Tamara Nicola. None of them had a challenger, so all 3 of them are automatically elected to another 6-year term. Turning to the county offices on the ballot, we have a form of county government that is made up of an elected 5-member board of county commissioners and 5 elected constitutional officers. These are all partisan positions. The commissioners are elected in single district elections. So that means the voters in each district elect their commissioner. The constitutional officers are elected in at-large elections by all voters countywide. So starting with the Board of County Commissioners, here's a map of the county that shows the 5 county commission districts. The reason the districts are different sizes is because they are drawn to have roughly the same population. And so we know that the districts on the West Coast are the most densely populated, and District 5 has a lot of farmland and the Everglades, and District 1 similarly has preserve land, and that's why those districts are larger. Now, you'll remember we talked about Districts 2 and 4. Those were on the ballot in 2022, and District 2 elected Chris Hall, and District 4 elected Dan Kowal. So here we see the 5 commissioners, with District 1, 3, and 5 being on the ballot this year, and all 3 of those incumbents are seeking another term. District 1 incumbent Rick Locastro is being challenged by a write-in candidate. So what that means is that Locastro is not automatically declared the winner in August. Instead, he will be on the ballot in November, and there will be a line with an oval next to it to give voters a choice. In District 3, this is where the action is. We remember that Alfie Oaks challenged all of the incumbents who supported the mask ordinance. And here we see the opportunity to see what happens to Bert Saunders. Incumbent Bert Saunders is seeking a 3rd term, and he has 3 Republican challengers: John Johnson, Frank Roberts, and Floyd Tagg Yarnell. But there's also a choice for voters in November, and that's Richard Conover, a no-party affiliation candidate. Because there's a choice for voters in November, the primary will be closed, and only registered Republicans will be able to vote for one of those 4 people to be their county commissioner. And then the winner will face Conover on the ballot in November. In District 5, the incumbent is Bill McDaniel. He has 1 Republican challenger. There is no other option for voters, and therefore this becomes a universal primary open to all qualified voters who live in District 5. And this race will be decided in August. Moving on to the county commissioners, all 5 of these offices are up for re-election this year: tax collector, property appraiser, clerk of the circuit court and comptroller, sheriff, and supervisor of elections. The tax collector is Rob Stoneburner. He had no challengers, and so he will automatically be granted a second 4-year term. For property appraiser, we have an interesting situation because the incumbent property appraiser, Abe Skinner, has chosen not to seek re-election. So there are 4 people Republicans vying for that position: Vicki Downs, Rick Lussey, James Molinar, and Julian Stokes Jr. But there is a write-in candidate, which has the effect of closing this primary so that only registered Republicans can vote in the property appraiser race. This is where the decision is going to be made, but the winner will appear on the November ballot above a line that says write-in. For clerk of court, the incumbent is Crystal Kinzel. She had no challengers, so she is automatically reelected. Similarly, Sheriff Kevin Rambosk had no challengers, and he is automatically reelected. Supervisor of elections. Here we have 3 Republicans. We have the incumbent, Melissa Blazier, who was appointed to the position by Governor DeSantis when Jennifer Edwards resigned. She is running for her first 4-year term, and her challengers are Tim Jarrett and Dave Schaffel. There is a write-in candidate, which has the effect of closing the supervisor of elections race, and only registered Republicans may vote in the closed primary for supervisor of elections. The winner, for all practical purposes, is going to be decided in August, but they will have to go on the ballot in November above a line that says write-in. We also have school board races on the ballot. Collier County has a 5-member school board. The 5 members are elected by all voters county-wide, regardless of where in the county people live or their party affiliation, since they're nonpartisan. However, there is a requirement that 1 school board member live in each of the 5 county commission districts. These are the 5 current members of the school board. Jerry Rutherford, Kelly Lichter, and Tim Moshier were Alfie's Freedom Picks in 2022. District 2, Stephanie Lucarelli, and District 4, Eric Carter, are running for a third term each this year. And each of them has 1 challenger endorsed by the Republican Party of Collier County. Stephanie Lucarelli is being challenged by Pam Cunningham. Eric Carter is being challenged by Tom Henning. Since there are only 2 people running for each seat, these races will both be decided in August. So,
Sandy, may we stop a minute for a couple of questions before
absolutely.
we get into your takeaways?
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. So the first one, is there a term limit for the county Republican committee chair?
I'm not aware. I don't think so, because Doug Rankin has had that position for many, many years.
Okay.
I'm not positive, but I don't think so.
And the next question, how would you recommend that we best learn about the judges' positions on certain issues prior to casting a vote?
Right. So one of the things that I do in Sparker Soapbox is I research everything that's publicly available about all of the candidates that we will have to choose from. I spend a lot of time researching judges. There's no rocket science to it. You do Google searches. You look on the Bar Association website. You talk to people you know who are practicing attorneys or possibly judges, and gather as much information as you can. It's time consuming, but that's what I do. And so I would recommend that everybody be signed up for my Sparker Soapbox updates, and then I will be sharing with people the information that I have gathered.
Great, thank you.
Is that it?
That's it so far. Thank
I'm
you.
going to give you all a summary to try and help you wrap your head around what will be on your ballot depending on your party affiliation and where you live. So starting out, regardless of your party affiliation, all Collier voters will vote in nonpartisan races for school board districts 2 and 4 and circuit judge groups 20/6 and 20/28. If you live in County Commission District 5, because both candidates are Republicans, it's a universal primary, so your party affiliation doesn't matter. If you live in the Greater Naples Fire District, there will be a referendum on the ballot asking whether you approve an increase in the property tax millage rate. In addition, if you are a registered Republican, you will have a closed primary for U.S. Senate to choose between Rick Scott and the others challenging him. You will have supervisor of elections, property appraiser, and Republican state committeeman and committeewoman. If you live in District 26, which is the eastern side of the county where I think it was 55% of Collier voters live, you will have a Republican primary choosing between Mario Diaz-Balart and 2 Republican challengers. If you live in State House District 81, where Bob Rommel is your representative, there will be an open race between Greg Foley and Yvette Benaroche. And if you live in County Commission District 3, you will have Bert Saunders with his 3 challengers. If you're a registered Democrat, the only choice you will have is Debbie McCarcel Powell and her challengers for the U.S. Senate. And if you were living in that northern part of Immokalee that falls into Congressional District 18, you will also have a Democratic primary to choose your Congress member. So that's the summary. I want to leave everybody with 3 key takeaways. The first is that August is when people need to be paying attention. Many, if not most, of our representatives will be chosen in August, either officially or for all practical purposes. Secondly, because Florida is a closed primary state, you must register with a party to vote in its primary. And you must do that 29 days before Election Day, and that key date is July 22nd. So take steps now to make sure that you'll be ready to vote. First, update your voter registration in order to make sure that you can vote in the elections that you want to vote in. You use the same voter registration form if you changed your name, if you moved, or to change your party affiliation. You can go on colliervotes.gov, which is the Supervisor of Elections website, and click the link where it tells you how you can do those things. Secondly, I encourage everyone, and this is a League of Women Voters ad, they do as well, to request a vote by mail ballot. And you need to do that now every election season, every election cycle, because of a new law passed by the Florida government last year. So for the 2024 election cycle, you have to request if you want a ballot for August, if you want a ballot for November. You do that on colliervotes.gov, or you can call the supervisor's office and ask them to do it for you. There is a League of Women Voters resource called vote411.org. And there you can get personalized voting information. You can find out what's on your ballot, check the status of your voter registration, find your polling place, discover upcoming debates in your area, and much more. So the League encourages you to check out Vote 411. Make note of the key dates and plan when and how you will vote. As we've said, July 22nd is a key date to change your party affiliation and make other changes to your registration. Early voting will be between August 10th and 17th, and Election Day is August 20th. And then I would encourage you to sign up for my Sparker Soapbox emails and follow me on social media. I will be researching and writing about all the candidates and issues on the ballot. So with that, I hope you now feel better able to vote in the August primaries. I appreciate everyone's attention and would be happy to take any last minute questions or comments.
Well, Sandy, in the chat, there are lots of notes of appreciation for you and the work that you do. So thank you for everything you do for our community. This is so important, so vital.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting this. Appreciate it, to the League of Women Voters of Collier County.
So there's a question that I see actually that showed up on the screen. I believe it says, is there any chance I won't be able to vote for Debbie for Senate if I change to Republican for primary?
Yeah, so the way I would answer that is, Debbie is going to have a primary and she's going to have those, whatever, 3 or 4 people challenging her. You all are paying attention to what's going on. Have you heard anything about any of the people challenging Debbie, or is she the only person you've been hearing about? You can only choose the Republican ballot or the Democratic ballot. And as a Collier voter, all your local choices are going to be happening in the Republican ballot. So you have to decide, do you want the Democratic ballot or do you want the Republican ballot? That's up to you. But yeah, you won't be able to vote for Debbie in August, but assuming she wins in the Democratic primary, she'll be on the ballot in November against most likely Rick Scott, and everybody can vote in the general election regardless of party affiliation.
Great clarification. Thank you. Sandy, I think, oh, one more, lots of thanks. So Sandy, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Collier County, thank you. And thank you for everybody today for attending, which is so important. Remember that .411.org is a great resource to find information about your candidates. Please share that resource. Let everybody you know about the voter guide that is included in that resource. And lastly, we will be posting this video link on the League of Women Voters website. Go ahead and share it. Let everybody you know in Florida have access to this video link. It'll be easy to share, because the more people that understand how the closed primary system works, the more effective we can be in the outcome of the elections. Thank you so much, everybody. We hope you have a great day, and thanks for supporting democracy. All right, Sandy, good job. Thank you. I'm going to turn off the recording and we'll start getting it posted.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.